front end of the green Corvette police say former Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs was speeding in smashed the charred remains of the Toyota RAV4, a 23-year-old woman killed.
We haven't discussed the Henry Ruggs situation in thankfully quite some time because for the most part we didn't really have an update on Henry Ruggs. All we know was that his case was going to trial for quite possibly the worst story that we had to cover in the past year. And it seems like we are getting more answers in regards to one, what his future is going to be, and two, what the case against him is looking like. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. If you want shorter videos on this content and you want to push straight to your device, then I highly recommend you follow us on TikTok at Mikerophone NFL and on Instagram, which is at The Flight Mike. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Music and exercise go together like peanut butter and jelly. But you know what could really ruin a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? If you get low quality ingredients, which is why it's so important that you are listening to your music on the best possible device to really juice yourself up as you're getting a workout in, which is why I partner with Raycon, who just released their fitness earbuds. Raycon's earbuds help you go even harder with improved sound and smart tech. Did you know that Raycon's fitness earbuds were featured in Esquire magazine's best gadgets of 2021? And I'll tell you why they're my favorite earbuds on the market, because they were literally designed to stay in your ear no matter what the circumstances are in the middle of your workout. The unique earbud build has interchangeable gel tips because Raycon understands that everyone's ear is different. It's not one size fits all for earbuds. So there's 3 different gel tips that you could put onto your fitness earbuds in order to ensure that they fit into your ear. And that's before I actually get to the tech, man. Raycon's fitness earbuds have 54 hours of battery life. Raycon's customers love their fitness earbuds so much that they already have 35,000 5-star reviews. Get top of the line earbud functionality for half of the price of all the other competitors. And now's the perfect time to pick up a pair because right now, when you go to buyraycon.com/microphone, you'll get $20 off of your purchase of Raycon's fitness earbuds. And thank you, Raycon, for the sponsorship. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? So for those of you guys that don't recall what happened with the Henry Ruggs case, Henry Ruggs III was the first wide receiver selected in a truly storied wide receiver class in the 2020 NFL draft. And the reason why this was special, man, is you know how every year you just hear of analysts hyping up a specific position group in the NFL draft? Well, he was the first wide receiver selected in a draft that was going to have wide receivers that completely changed the trajectory of football. And for the most part, the analysts were right. In this wide receiver class alone, selected after Henry Ruggs were the likes of Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., and Chase Claypool. And honestly, we're just scratching the surface of how truly historic this wide receiver class can be. And he was the first one selected out of all of them, which means on top of that, he not only got a nice payday, but when you're selected with the 12th pick in the NFL draft, chances are that the team is going to run their offense through you in one way or another. And the thing about Henry Ruggs is during his first season in the NFL, he didn't really produce as much as we'd hope, but he didn't really get as many snaps as we'd like to see him in order to produce as much as we'd hope. In his second year, he was already kind of experiencing a breakout because he put up nearly the same exact amount of numbers in half the amount of games played, well, nearly, until a truly horrific headline and a truly grim mistake was made by Henry Ruggs. In November, we found out that Henry Ruggs was facing a felony charge for driving under the influence after a car crash resulting in the death of a 23-year-old woman and her dog. In the state of Nevada, this is a minimum of 2 years in state prison and a maximum of 20 years. At the same time, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police were conducting an ongoing investigation, and this is tragic from multiple standpoints. One, the number one tragedy of all of this is a young woman lost her life way too freaking soon. 23 years old is way too quick for anyone to have their life taken away from them. And when you go into the details of it, which we're about to get into the details of it, and I am going to warn you, it might be a little uncomfortable for some, it gets even worse. But on top of that, man, it's also tragic because this is a young man that clearly had a bright future for himself in the NFL, clearly was set to make a lot of money in the NFL, and obviously, unfortunately, as a result of one horrific decision, which included him getting drunk at Top Golf and then deciding to drive his car for over 100 miles per hour, which there are videos of, by the way, his career not only will never be the same again, but probably will never resume again. We're talking about a loss of millions and millions and millions of dollars for this young man, a robbery of generational wealth for his offspring, and obviously this is less tragic than the woman who lost her life, but all in all, it's just wasted opportunity combined with a young woman losing her life. It's just not a happy story. Now you might be wondering, why am I bringing this up? Well, we have an update on this. First, we learned from ESPN what went down behind the scenes in this very long article. So here's how it starts. On the drive home from an overnight shift at Paris Casino Peja, Komazek came upon a crash scene. To his right, a burned husk of metal rested in the middle of the road, and he couldn't tell whether it was a car or SUV. Its features had melted into anonymity. On the curb sat a crumpled Corvette that belonged to Las Vegas Raiders receiver Henry Ruggs III. But that news hadn't gotten out yet. It was hours before daylight on November 2nd, and by the time Komazek neared South Rainbow Boulevard that morning, fire had consumed whatever was in the street. Somebody got killed, he thought. Komazek had seen enough wrecks in the 24/7 freneticism of Las Vegas that he hadn't stopped to wonder whether he knew the person in that charred vehicle in the middle of the road. He turned and headed home. Again, super graphic description of what went on, man. So if this is uneasy for you, I advise your discretion. 3 stops away, a family was desperately trying to find their 23-year-old rock of the household. After working 6 days in a row, Tina Tinter had been out with a friend, walking her golden retriever Max. She had texted her mom to let her know that she'd be home late, but then calls to Tina's phone kept going to voicemail. Her family checked with area hospitals and clung to their phones as news trickled out. A celebrity, a football player, was involved in a crash. There were photos of that charred vehicle, a RAV4, and news that the driver of that car had died. Tina's mother cried because Tina drove a 2013 RAV4. Around 7 a.m., Komazek's sister, Mariana, knocked on the door of his house. "My Tina," she told him. "She never came home last night." Henry Ruggs III went home one day after the crash. He was released from the hospital and released from custody on a $150,000 bond and released by the Las Vegas Raiders. He was charged with multiple felonies, including driving under the influence, resulting in death, and reckless driving, and was put on house arrest with alcohol and location electronic monitoring devices. On Tuesday, his lawyers argued in court that Las Vegas police had no legal reason to request a warrant for blood to be drawn from Ruggs the morning of the crash, which, by the way, we do have an update on, and we'll get to that soon. It's a pretty fascinating story, and the result's gonna actually bring you guys some peace. Police did not conduct a field sobriety test at the site of the crash. A police report said that Ruggs refused. Henry Ruggs' lawyers plan to argue that any blood alcohol test results should not be allowed as evidence because there was no probable cause to believe that Ruggs was driving under the influence. Authorities say that Ruggs' blood alcohol content, measured 2 hours after the crash, was 0.161, which was more than twice the legal limit in Nevada. Which, man, it just sucks being a lawyer sometimes. You imagine just seeing your client's blood alcohol content and saying,
"Oh, yeah, there's no reason to include this as evidence in the crash. I'm sure this had nothing to do with the reason why my client drove over 100 miles per hour, which ended up in the death of a young 23-year-old woman and her dog."
But we have an update on that. We're going to get it to you guys in a sec. Authorities say that Ruggs tore through Las Vegas's valley west of the strip at 156 miles per hour in his Corvette Stingray. The Clark County coroner ruled in December that Tinter and her dog burned to death in the crash. "I've been involved in the justice system for over 40 years as both a defense lawyer and a young prosecutor, but I've never been involved in, or am I aware of, another criminal case involving somebody traveling 156 miles an hour." Now at this point, Henry Ruggs awaits a preliminary hearing, now set for September 7th, to determine whether he will stand trial in state court. Now this hearing has been rescheduled rescheduled 4 times, the latest postponement coming last month. And if convicted, the 23-year-old former Alabama standout faces a minimum of 2 years and a maximum of 50 years in prison, according to Wolfson. Now, one Las Vegas DUI defense lawyer came out who has no involvement in the case, said that such delays are not unusual given the volume of DUI cases in the city and the kind of legal maneuvering expected over evidence and medical records. Still, with each delay, a family wonders whether justice will be served. You can't even imagine the pain, Komazek said of his niece's death. You don't even know how you feel anymore. You don't even have feelings. The article continues to say that Komazek is having trouble sleeping. He scours the internet and finds stories of celebrities and privileged people who've committed crimes and done little or no time in Las Vegas. The family worries that the longer it takes for the case to be resolved, the less anyone will remember Tina Tinter. They want to know everything that happened the night Tinter died. They want to know where Ruggs and his girlfriend had been before the crash, what they were doing, who they were with, where they were going, and why he made the choices he did. I mean, like, there's no excuse to drive drunk, especially if you're a celebrity making millions and millions of dollars. But like, if you went to a club, at least I'd understand why you drank that night. I mean, obviously you shouldn't get behind the wheel, but I'd understand. But who the hell goes to Top Golf and says, hey, you know what would make this even more fun? If we just started drinking and just hit golf balls as hard as we freaking can. Now, none of this will answer the existential questions. Why was a football player with a multi-million-dollar contract in his car rather than one of the numerous rideshare options? How could this happen when Ruggs' life and career had been defined by a prior deadly crash? Because on the header of Ruggs' Twitter page, which had been silent since October 31st, is a picture of a tombstone which lists his friend Roderick D. Scott's date of birth, the date of his death, and an epitaph for a young man who never saw his 18th birthday. I will do something great. I will be something great. Ruggs had those words tattooed on his leg. He'd been friends with Scott since elementary school, when they met every morning to play basketball at a YMCA in Montgomery, Alabama. They became best friends at Robert E. Lee High School and dreamed of getting out of Montgomery and playing in the NBA. Ruggs even said that he wouldn't be playing football if it weren't for Scott. Scott even accepted a basketball scholarship to Jacksonville State, and their futures seemed pretty set. Shortly after their basketball team was eliminated from the postseason, Scott and Ruggs planned a trip to Birmingham to cheer for their friends in the state finals. Ruggs was supposed to drive, but he caught the flu, so Scott rode with 4 other teenagers, including his longtime friend Darian Adams. It was raining on the morning of March 3rd, 2016. As they headed north on the Interstate 65, Adams said the driver was speeding and distracted on her phone. He had asked her to slow down. He was sleeping in the back seat unrestrained when he awoke to the thump of tires riding over rumble strips, but Adams somehow managed to doze off again. Shortly after that, the car started hydroplaning, then left the road and overturned. So it tells the story of how Henry Ruggs' childhood friend literally was taken away from him from a car accident, and the article continues to say that you would think that he will learn something about this. Now, here's where things are interesting, because this is the latest to do with Henry Ruggs, because I feel like most of this other stuff is stuff we already are aware of, and if you want to hear more about it, I'll leave an article in the description down below. But here's where we currently stand. On March 16th, the Clark County Court granted Ruggs permission to leave home confinement twice a week and to work out for 3 hours a day at a training center in the Las Vegas Valley near Red Rock Canyon. The gym touts itself as a premier sports facility catering to pro-level athletes. So you might be thinking, why is Henry Ruggs starting to train for 3 hours a day twice a week? You might be thinking that he's gearing up for maybe a return to football. Now, the article continues to say that it's unclear whether Henry Ruggs is actually working out or whether he has hopes of someday resurrecting his football career. Ruggs' lawyer, David Chesnoff, said his client will not do interviews while the case is ongoing. Chesnoff would not comment on a motion that the defense made and a judge granted in late April requesting permission for Ruggs to go to California for 1 month, May 2nd to June 2nd, for medical treatment. ESPN requested a copy of the defense's motion, but the court sealed the document outlining his medical needs. Dozens of his friends and ex-teammates were contacted for the story, and a number of them either didn't reply or declined to comment. Ruggs' agent, Jovan Barnes, who has made numerous trips to Las Vegas since November 2nd to be with Ruggs, said that he would like to talk about the Henry Ruggs he knows, but that he can't comment. So before we get to any attempt that Henry Ruggs is trying to make to potentially return to the NFL, I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that as of right now, and Thankfully, a Las Vegas judge ruled Tuesday that blood alcohol tests are permitted as evidence in the case of former Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs III. Now look, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not necessarily the type of person that wants to see Henry Ruggs in jail for 50 years because I don't think a person's life should be defined by one truly horrific mistake that he's made. Obviously, I'd like to see him punished for what has happened, but I'm not pro cancel culture at all whatsoever. I feel like there's a lot of things going on that we're just not talking about that Henry Ruggs is going through himself. I mean, mentally, he needs to internalize the fact that one, he repeated a mistake that was related to how his best friend died, and two, he caused a tremendous amount of pain to a family by killing a young 23-year-old woman. Yes, you shouldn't get behind the wheel for driving drunk, and of course I hope he gets the proper punishment for this, but I don't think he necessarily deserves to lose a majority of his life and see freedom at the age of 73 as a result of what he did. I hope they give him the proper punishment. Obviously, I hope the victim's family gets some sort of peace from this whole situation because I could only imagine the amount of pain that they're going through. But at the same time, I think we need to address something that football fans might be interested in, and that's whether or not Henry Ruggs is going to return to the NFL. Now, here's the thing. There has been a situation that is similar to this. In 2009, wide receiver Dante Stallworth was suspended for 1 season after pleading guilty to DUI manslaughter. 1 year earlier, defensive end Leonard Little was suspended 8 games after an involuntary manslaughter plea, meaning that the NFL has been in this situation before. But obviously, it was during a different era where social media wasn't as prevalent. Do I think Henry Ruggs is going to be let back into the NFL? I really don't know. It really depends on how his case goes. I mean, if he sees jail time for 5 years or like 7-8 years and he stays in shape, I could imagine him trying to make a comeback attempt. But at the same time, man, the NFL has been dealing with so much heat recently between what's going on with Deshaun Watson's case currently and what John Gruden is suing the NFL for, and the situation with Dan Snyder that is currently going on, in addition to Brian Flores trying to sue the NFL for alleged racism. That, to be honest, and I know this is going to sound horrible, but this is just because I haven't heard an update for a while, I completely forgot about Henry Ruggs' case up until now where we were given an update on anything. And I think the last thing the NFL wants to deal with is taking back a player that recently got behind the wheel intoxicated and resulted in the manslaughter of a young woman. But maybe in 5 years from now, things are going to be different. Maybe in 7 years from now, things are going to be different. Do I think the guy deserves a second chance? Well, after he gets rehabilitated or after his punishment, based upon what his punishment is, if he serves his time and at least is punished to some degree, then yes, I do believe in second chances. But does this mean I think that he should be let off scot-free for the situation? Obviously not. Either way, it's a situation that I'm going to be keeping you guys updated on. I definitely have a certain level of empathy towards not only the family that lost their young daughter, but also to Henry Ruggs and all the torment that he must be going through for his horrific decision. I'm going to keep you guys updated on the next evolution of this case. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.